All right, so let's take a look at the first thing that is going to be a large factor in this game. That is going to be the lane phase. So I typically have 3 questions that I like to ask myself at the start of every single game. These questions are: how do I want to play the lane phase? What is my role on the team? And what is my team's win condition? And you want to be thinking of these questions before the game, whether that be in the loading screen or in Champion Select. So you don't have to have that burden of trying to panic and think of these things later on in the middle of the game. So you just think about these things earlier, and then that's all information that you have during the game. So if you were thinking about the lane phase, because that is the first thing that it comes into play. If you were thinking about the lane phase, either in Champion Select or the loading screen, you would have it figured out by now that this is probably a lane that, let's see, Braum and Tristana into Janna Varus. So anytime you're up against a Janna lane, it's kind of difficult to be very active because Janna is probably the safest support in the game right now, very peel focused, able to keep her ADC alive in a lot of situations. So anytime you're up against a Janna, it's going to be somewhat difficult to pick up kills in the lane. But if there ever was a good combination for you to be running into Janna, I think Braum Tristana is really, really good. So I don't think Braum is in a great position right now in the meta. But what he does work best with is champions like Tristana. The reason for that being is because champions like Tristana who have a gap closer, an ability that allows them to move around the map, even if it's just on a very long cooldown. What that allows Braum to do is then follow them up. So a really good example is why he works so well with Tristana is because Tristana can jump in, and then Braum can easily jump to Tristana, and then you guys are basically right on top of them. That's a really good way to initiate fights. So with all of that being said, I think it's pretty clear that this is a lane that you can potentially win. It'll be a little bit difficult because you are up against a Janna, but still Braum Tristana is a solid lane, and that is something that you should be able to take advantage of. Let's back things up though, because I do want to take a look at how you guys controlled the wave from the very beginning. All right, so this is a very important piece of information regarding tank support. So, basically every single tank support in the game right now is going to be running Relic Shield. And the level 2 power spike is such an important piece of the lane phase, if not the most important piece. And when you are playing a tank support who runs Relic Shield, you can have a large influence on the wave. Typically, the ADC is the one who's going to completely control the wave, and supports are somewhat limited as far as how much they can control the wave. Of course, supports can auto-attack the wave here and there to help control it, but for the most part, they don't have all that much control. However, when you are playing a tank support with Relic Shield, you have a lot more control. So what you ideally want to do is use that Relic Shield to get complete control of the wave. And you're going to do it one of 2 ways depending on the matchup. So if you are in a favorable matchup, you ideally want to be saving your Relic Shield stacks for the second wave. So level 2 is achieved after the first wave dies, as well as the first 3 the first 3 melee creeps in the second wave. So ideally, you want to be saving your Relic Shield stacks for the 2 of the 3 melee creeps on the second wave. Why that is so effective is because it is going to give you a little bit of an element of surprise. If the enemy team sees that they have 3 melee creeps left before you hit level 2, and all of a sudden you use Relic Shield on 2 of them and kill them very fast, they're going to be caught off guard, and that's a really good opportunity for you to then abuse your level 2 power spike and try to trade with the enemy and get something done. So we'll play it out here and see how you use it. So you're going to use it on the first wave. So like I said, there are two ways to approach using Relic Shield. Ideally, you want to be saving it for the second wave. The other option when it comes to using a Relic Shield is using it on the first wave. But you only want to do that if you are in a lane that you don't feel comfortable pushing that far up for the Relic Shield procs in the second wave. So for example, let's say you were playing Braum Jinx instead of Tristana into a Draven Thresh lane. That is a lane that you probably lose. So because that is, a not so favorable matchup, that is not a lane that you would feel comfortable walking all the way up and using your Relic Shield on the second wave. So instead, you would just play it safe. You would get your Relic Shield stacks out of the way on the first wave. However, in this game, that's not really the case, as we established a very favorable matchup. Braum Tristana, really solid lane. Janna Varus, even though Janna's pretty protective, they're both fairly immobile. Good lane matchup for you guys to be in. So for that reason, you don't need to be using your Relic Shield stacks on the first wave. You can hold off onto them or hold them off until the second wave. use your Rogue Shield procs on the 2 of the 3 first melee creeps, and that'll give you a little bit more of an element of surprise. The other thing that I would say, and even though you don't have that much control over this, so the level 2 power spike, as we've talked about so much already, there's a lot of things that you have to consider when thinking about the level 2 power spike, because it's not only managing to hit level 2 before your opponent, but it's also making sure that you're in a correct position to use that level 2 power spike when you do get it, and that you are able to use it. So the problem here is this is a combination of you using your Relic Shield procs on the first wave, as well as Tristana pushing. So you guys are going to get control of this wave, but the problem is you guys are pushing it so hard that the wave is now going to crash. The second wave is going to crash around here. So even though you guys are most likely going to get the level 2 power spike, and as it plays out, we'll probably see that happen, you guys won't be in a good position then to take control of it. So instead, if you ever have an opportunity like this where you have an Ivern jungle, or maybe you just don't have to leash at all, you know, just because you're in lane first, that doesn't mean that you need to be pushing in this wave so fast. Because let's play it out, and we'll see right now. The second wave is going to crash right here. It's going to crash here now. And you guys, even if you do get the level 2 power spike, you're not in a good position to capitalize on it. Because instead of the wave crashing over here, and you having this entire space here to trade with the enemy, instead you're limited to this very small area right here between the wave and between the tower. So that is, you know, all the factors that go into level 2 power spike. How to use the Rogue Shield properly, making sure that you're not overly pushing so that it is in a good position if you are able to get it. That is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see players making, because even though most people do understand that the level 2 power spike is important, not many people, you know, factor in that it's not all about getting the level 2 power spike. It's about making sure that you're in a good position to use it when you do achieve that spike. Also, so this is something that is more important when it comes to playing something like a mage support, somebody like Brand, maybe Zyra. But I mean, it can go for any champion really. Anytime you're sitting at above 70% mana or so, that means that you're not being as active as you possibly could have. So, you know, make sure that you are using some abilities. Here we are finally using some, but for the first few minutes or so, I think you could have been a little bit more threatening. Also, you are standing very far back in the wave, which is going to be bad for a few reasons. When you are standing this far back, the first problem with that is you're not very threatening. In order for you to, you know, as Braum, to be somewhat of a lane bully, in order to make plays happen in the lane, you need to be standing towards the front of the wave so that you can always have the opportunity to either jump into a minion and then start attacking them, or land a Q. If you're standing all the way back, then the enemy team is going to feel very comfortable in this lane. And another reason that is such a problem is because if you think about it, a lot of the times if you are in a favorable matchup and you go even in that lane, technically you guys are actually losing because, you know, you should in most situations be able to pull ahead in that lane. So the fact that you aren't pulling ahead is somewhat hurting you. So this is a lane that you should be winning. It's very early on, so I'm not expecting too much yet. But you should at least be in the front of the minion wave, threatening to do something, and trying to get a lead on them, whether that be trying to pick up kills or just establish a CS advantage. The other problem with you standing so far back in the wave is your body language. So body language is one of those things that is very underrated in League of Legends. Not many people account for it, and not many people understand how important it really is. So body language is basically just your character movements. The reason that it's such a big factor is because if you are standing back here the whole time, the enemy team will read your body language, and they'll see that this is typically how you're going to be playing. And the second that you walk forward, they're going to be suspicious because you're switching up the pattern of your body language. So if a gank is breaking out and you start walking up, they're going to immediately back off because you're doing something suspicious, you're doing something different. So that is just another reason why standing towards the front of the wave is going to be really impactful because it's going to throw them off. They won't know if you're standing up here looking to engage on them in a 2v2, or they won't know if your jungler's nearby. So those are a couple really, really valuable reasons that you should always be a little bit further up in the lane phase. Again, we're only 3 minutes into this game, so it's kind of hard to tell what patterns you have entirely, but from what I've seen so far, I would say that is a little bit of an issue. Another way to be a little bit more aggressive in this lane is something that I mentioned earlier. And although this does take a little bit of synergy with your ADC, a very easy way for you to be engaging in these little skirmishes in the bot lane, aside from Wing to minions and auto attacking them or landing your Qs, is what I mentioned earlier, which is Tristana jumping in and then you following up with a jump. So those are 3 options for you to be aggressive in this lane phase. Anytime you're playing Braum, the 2 easiest ways will be either landing a Q and then following up on that because they'll be slowed, or using your W to a minion and then auto-attacking and queuing from there. And then the third option, as I just briefly mentioned, is anytime you're playing with a champion like Tristana who has these jumps, these mobile abilities, who can jump in, then you can follow up with. So those are a bunch of options for you to be aggressive, and we'll see as this lane phase plays out if you do follow up with some of those tactics. So this was actually a pretty straightforward fight, not too much to look at it. But what I would say is this is the first real skirmish, real kind of trade that you guys have had in this lane phase. And I think that if you guys had done this earlier, you probably would have had the same effect. So it's somewhat of a shame that you guys hadn't done it earlier, but the fact that you guys were able to pull it off should show you one thing. So anytime you are playing a game and something really, really beneficial happens, what you immediately want to do is ask yourself, what did we do right there, so that you can start to repeat it. So the minute that you guys see this work, ideally what I'd like to see you do is as this kill is about to play out, as soon as you guys push out this wave, come back to lane, you guys should just look to repeat this over and over and over. This is something that not many people think about. So people just play the game out. They get a kill here and there. They get some objectives, and they never really consider why it is or what it is that led to that happening. So what happened here is it was as simple as you were able to land a Q, and then the Tristana jumped, you jumped, and then it was very simple after that. Simple follow through. You guys were able to proc the passive and pick up this kill. So now you guys should just look to rinse and repeat that over and over and over. This is not only a factor in the lane phase, but as well as late game. So if you're ever in a situation where your team is struggling, but all of a sudden you guys do something really, really well, you want to ask yourself what it is that you did well, so that you can rinse and repeat that. I know that sounds very obvious, like some very basic knowledge, but you'd be surprised how many people don't really consider what it is that they're actually doing that is benefiting them. Also, this ignite here is a good ignite. My general rule for using ignite is you always want to use it whenever the enemy is, I would say, 50% or lower, or any time that you are in a fight that you feel has a very, very good chance of going your way. The 50% rule is because you don't want to be using ignite too early. They just flash away and then it's wasted, so you want to make sure that you're waiting until 50%. The other rule, though, is if you are ever in a fight that you feel has a really good chance of going your way. I think this fight right here is one of those examples. So I think you could have actually ignited earlier, because you want to get that ignite off as early as possible. Just in case they do use an early heal, you want to make sure that that heal is lowered as much as possible. So if they're 50% or low, ignite is fine. Or ever if you're in a trade that you feel is very favorable and feel that you can win it ultimately, then you would be using ignite. Another big thing that I want to talk about is right here, though. This is what I was afraid of seeing, but it is what is happening. It's another really, really big issue that I see in lower elo games. I believe you're a gold player, correct? So you're somewhat low elo. I would say that anything below platinum is low elo. Everything above platinum is somewhat high elo, and platinum is right in the middle. But this is one of the most common mistakes that I see in low elo. So let's back this up here, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So anytime that you get a kill in the lane phase, what the first thing that should pop into your mind is, I want to push in this wave and I want to back. And that is going to be beneficial for 3 reasons. The first reason is the faster that you push in this wave, the more CS and the more gold that you're going to be denying from this enemy ADC. The other reason is, along with the CS that they're missing, they're also going to fall very far behind in experience. The third reason is because the faster that you are able to push in this wave and get back to base, the faster it is that you're going to be roaming. And all that time that you can save by efficiently pushing in this wave and recalling is going to be really beneficial, because time is everything in this game when it comes to playing support, because roaming is such a big factor. And as you recall, we'll take a look and we'll talk about roaming a little bit. But time is everything when it comes to roaming. Every little second that you can save being efficient in the lane phase, whether that be because pushing in a wave or just getting an efficient recall time. All that extra time that you can save is going to go towards roaming. But again, we'll talk about roaming in just a second. As soon as this kill comes in, though, the first thing that should pop into your mind is we want to push in this wave and we want to recall. So the problem is even though Tristana is on the same page, she's kind of pushing this wave as fast as she can. What you're doing is you're just walking around a little bit. So I mentioned briefly a little bit earlier on that even though the ADC does have the most impact on the managing the wave, the support can have somewhat of an impact. So what you want to be doing in situations like this is auto-attacking the wave to get the minions low. You're not going to be taking the CS, you're not going to get them so low to the point that Tristana can't last hit them anymore, but you do want to be auto-attacking this wave to get them low, so it's as simple as one auto-attack on every single minion. The other problem is you waste a little bit more time recalling here because you don't see the enemy wave. But let's change this to your vision real quick. The easiest way to tell where the enemy wave is by looking at your wave. So you see that your next wave is at your tower right here, so that should instantly tell you that their wave is going to be right here. And you want to make sure that when you are pushing in this wave, that you're pushing it all the way under the tower. If you only push the wave in here and you did recall as you were starting to recall there, the problem is you wouldn't have denied a lot of CS, you wouldn't have denied a lot of experience, and at the same time, they would have had a freeze right here, which is awful for you guys because you guys are in a lane that you want to win. So you want to make sure that the wave is always in a good position for you guys to fight. So you guys are eventually going to push in this wave, but I think it could have been a lot faster had you been autoing your wave here. Also, that you caught up to this wave sooner. I think you autoed a little bit here. Yeah, this is a little bit better. One last factor that I want to talk about, which just goes hand in hand with the fact that you always want to save as much time as possible, is after autoing the wave a certain amount, you then want to recall. So a good example, I'll find a good time to pause. Yeah, let's pause it right here. So right here, if you look at all the minions, these are 1 HP, this is 1 hit, 1 hit, 1 hit, right? So at this point, if you pause it, the minion wave is no longer able to be affected by you without ruining it for your ADC and without stealing CS. So you want to be helping them push in the wave, auto-attacking as much as possible, but at a certain point you won't be able to anymore. So whenever you get to a position like this where you auto-attack the wave, it's very low, but there's nothing you can do anymore. At this point you want to start your recall. Again, going back to the idea that you want to be saving every little bit of time that you possibly can. It's only going to waste a few seconds there, but had you just recalled a few seconds earlier, you would have been able to have a few more seconds to roam. You just recalled those, so let's take a look at what you're building first. So we're going to upgrade that, and boots. Okay, so I don't think you should have boots at this point, because you should have magical footwear, but we'll talk about runes at the very end. But pretty standard build right there. As you're leaving Fountain, though, this is the perfect time to talk about roaming. So the best 3 times to be roaming is anytime your ADC is dead, anytime your ADC has a safe and secure freeze and lane. And when I say safe and secure, that means that they are, a really good example is they are here with a really good wave stacked up, ready for them to freeze, as well as they have vision around them so that they won't get dove. So anytime your ADC has a safe and secure freeze and lane, anytime your ADC is dead, and every single time that you are leaving the fountain, whether that be because you recalled or because you died. And when I say roam, it's not as simple as going mid lane and trying to help your mid laner pick up a kill. I think that's a really common misunderstanding. Every time I tell somebody that they need to roam, they often think that that just means that they're going to run mid and try to get something accomplished there. But roaming can be a lot more than that. So roaming could be something along the lines of trying to get a dragon with your jungler. It could be something along the lines of getting vision in the enemy jungle or in the river. It could be invading the enemy jungler with your jungler, or it could, just as well be going mid. But the thing is these are all options, and you want to make sure that you are giving yourself these options. So every time you're leaving base, instead of taking this path here down the bot lane, what you want to be doing is taking this path here through the river. What that is going to do is give you a lot of options. Instead of, if you go bot, you're basically limiting yourself to going bot lane. Whereas if you go this way through the river, from here you can either go mid, you can go to dragon, you can go to the jungle, or you can just go bot lane. And if you do end up seeing that there's nothing able to do on the map and you do go bot lane, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's only like a 5-second difference if you're taking this path and then going bot lane rather than just going this way. So that is what you want to be doing. You went this way, or you kind of went down late and then cut in, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But instead, you want to be just taking this path instead. Also, might as well mention it because we just saw you drop this ward. I don't recommend this ward here. I think that you should be saving control wards for neutral objectives like Rift Herald, Baron, and Dragon for when you actually are doing them. Right now, this isn't really accomplishing too much. I think this ward would have been much better here, potentially maybe here. I even think a control ward here or here would have been a little bit more beneficial. But yeah, putting control wards on the neutral objectives when you're not actually planning on doing them is not going to be the best idea in the world. Maybe if you are up against somebody like a Shyvana, maybe an Udyr or a Warwick, who are these champions that are very well known for doing or even Nunu, very well known for doing very early dragons, then that might be a viable option to drop a control ward in a neutral objective area like that. But even then, I'd probably still be dropping a regular ward instead. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about wards then. So your first ward of the map, or the first ward that you place of the game is going to be the most important. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but for whatever reason, it passed my mind. So the best time, your first ward, like I said, is going to be the most important, and it's going to be solely based on where the enemy jungler starts. If the enemy jungler starts bot side, then you want to ward around 3:30 or 4 minutes. And that's because their common gank or clear path will be from buff to wolves to buff, followed by a 3-minute gank either top or mid. And then in order for them to get back bot, it'll be around 3:30 or 4 minutes. So you don't have to ward until that time if the jungler does start bot lane. If they start top lane, it's going to be the same gank or clear path from buff to wolves to buff, followed by a 3-minute gank either mid or bot, which is why you're going to be warding around 2:45. From the red side, I would say that the best places to ward during the lane phase are going to be right here on this corner bush. And even though this bush is very common, you need to make sure that when you are placing wards here that it's on this corner bush. I have a saying that I like, I have a saying that you should never be lazy with your wards, and you always want to put your wards in the best place possible so that it gets you the maximum amount of vision. So, for example, this ward here, if you place the ward here in this bush, you're only going to be getting vision of this area, whereas if you put your ward on this corner of the bush, you're going to be getting this entire area here. Another good ward from the red side is going to be right here. The reason for that being is because this bush right here is really hard to contest when there's control wards in it. You can ward here only if you are very comfortable in the lane that you are in. But aside from that, if you are even or even behind in the lane, this is going to be a really hard ward to contest. So instead, it's better to just drop a ward here because this won't get picked up by a control ward, and it'll still give you vision of people coming from this intersection. From the blue side, however, since you're on this side, this will be a really good bush for you to ward. Really easy to ward. You can contest this very easily, as well as this ward here. Wards in the nearest bush to you, like this one here, or if you're on the blue side, this one here, are really good for lane ganks. So those are going to be your most common wards during the lane phase. As far as control wards go, you can always put a control ward in the nearest bush to you. So if you're on the red side, this would be a good control ward. If you're on the blue side, this would be a good control ward. If you're looking to play a little bit more defensive from the blue side, a ward here might be good. If you're looking to play a little bit more defensive on the red side, a control ward here might be good. And if you're looking to play aggressive and have a really deep control ward from the red side, this is a really good spot to put a ward. And for the blue side, this is a really aggressive spot to put a control ward. But it all depends on where you stand in the game. Of course, if you were the blue team in this situation, if you were the Janna or Varus, they are behind currently in this game. You guys just picked up a kill on them. You guys have a CS lead, a BF sword to a pickaxe. This is not a lane that they are looking very good in. So if you were them, you would not try to overextend and put a control ward here or here just because of where they are in the game. On the other hand, because you guys are somewhat ahead, you could potentially drop a control ward or a ward here, contest this bush, or even a control ward here. Okay, so we talked a lot about the level 2 power spike. We spent a large portion of time on that, and that's because anytime that you are... the reason that level 2 power spike is so important because you basically have double the amount of abilities as your opponent, right? You will have 2 at level 2, your ADC will have 2, so you guys have 4 combined. The enemy team is going to have 2 abilities still. So 4 abilities to 2, you guys should win that in most situations, and that's why the level 2 power spike is so very important. At the same time, though, the level 6 power spike kind of has the same concept behind it, because again, you're going to have many more abilities available than the enemy. So that is something that you need to keep track of. So if you were watching your experience at this time and you noticed that you're about to hit 6, then as soon as you hit 6, you should have been in a position to engage on the enemy team. So anytime you are able to get a spike, whether that be level 2 or level 6, what you want to be doing is eyeing your experience bar and start walking towards the enemy at the same time that the minion is getting killed. That is going to allow you to hit level 6. So let's back this up here and take a look at it. So is it this minion here, maybe? It's going to be this one. So this minion right here, as soon as you saw that you were about to hit 6, what you should have been doing is walking towards the enemy as this minion was about to die. Because then you would have been in a really good position to use that power spike right away. Instead, where you are, your positioning is way back here. You're not in a good position to capitalize on it. And instead, in order to do something, you're just now realizing, oh, I'm level 6, I need to do something, but it's too late, you're not in a good position. So you need to make sure that you're walking up to make sure that you are in a good position when you do hit those power spikes. Even then, though, you guys still have the level 6 power spike. Let's see how much you use it. We'll let this play out, and then we'll go take a look at it. Not the cleanest fight, but I think you guys get it anyways. So let's go back and see what you could have done better, maybe. So I think the R usage here is really good because you are able to line them up with both. You're going to hit the Janna here, and Varus is going to flash this. After that, though, okay, so this is the thing. This is very common for other champions like Blitzcrank. Maybe even Rakan is a good example. So what I mean by this is you always want to eliminate probability. So like I was saying, Blitzcrank, instead of using his hook, sometimes it's a better chance, or it's a wiser idea to knock them up first using your E and then hook them because you're eliminating probability. Same thing with Rakan. There's no reason to just use your W and risk missing it when you can just use your R, charm them, and get the knockup guaranteed. So here, what I'm saying is, instead of using your Q here, what I would have liked you to do is simply auto-attack. Because what you want to do is get your passive starting to stack, right? But throwing your Q is going to have a probability of missing, and as we saw, it did miss. So you always want to do use the abilities in a correct order that will eliminate probability and give you the highest chance of getting what you want accomplished. So in this example, you want to proc your passive, you want to get it stacked. So instead of using your Q earlier, I would have liked to see you simply auto-attack first. Also, really good job of making sure that you were auto-attacking Varus there as well to make sure that you did get the passive procced. So you guys did win this simply, I would say, because you were level 6 and because you have a stronger lane phase as well as stronger items. But definitely some things that you could have done differently there that would have made that a little bit cleaner of a fight. Okay, so I mentioned a lot about how time is everything in this game and how every little bit of time that you are able to save and use correctly is going to make a difference. So I think that this is a prime example here because you are taking this path here down the bot lane rather than the path down the river like I recommended. And that is going to cost you a few seconds. So we'll speed things up and we'll see you're about to join in on this fight here. I'm pretty sure from what I saw briefly that this does go your way. But a really solid example is, had you taken the correct path down the river and saved all that little bit of time, you might be here a few seconds earlier, and maybe this fight it goes a lot more in your favor. I think that you guys still are able to win it. So luckily, as I like to say, it works out in this situation, but it won't always work out in another situation where this is maybe a closer fight. So that is just a really prime example of how time really can go a long ways in this game. Also, before we skip ahead, I also want to mention this word here. So control words, we talked a lot about them. When it comes to placing control words in neutral objective areas, whether that be the Baron Pit or the Dragon Pit, this right here is not going to be the best place to put it. Instead, you want to put it right here. If you drop the control word right here, which is just in front of the dragon, it will cover the entire pit as well as grant some vision on this side as well. So I think Yasuo is over here or something like that. You probably might have had vision of him had you placed your control word here. Wait, Yasuo's here now. But yeah, you want to be placing your control word right here because even though this looks better because it's going to guarantee that it gets the entire dragon pit, simply the way that it works is putting your control word here will still grant vision of the entire dragon pit as well as some vision in the river. So you guys are still somewhat in the lane phase. As we can see, you guys are pushing down this tower still 10 minutes into the game. Pretty understandable that you guys are still in the lane phase. But before we get to the mid to late game, I wanted to discuss the other two questions that I mentioned at the very start of this coaching session. So like I said, I have 3 questions that I'd like to ask myself. How do I want to play the lane phase? What is my role on the team? And what is my team's win condition? So we already talked about all the stuff in the lane phase. You guys just took this tower down, so lane phase is kind of somewhat over. As for your role on the team, so champions' roles will vary from game to game. Depending on the champion. So a really solid example, the best example that I can give is Alistar. So Alistar, sometimes his role can be very peel focused. He can use his knock up and his combos to knock up and knock away enemy frontliners and keep them away from his carries. That is one role that he could fulfill. On the other hand, he could take the approach of using his combos to engage for his team. It's just going to solely depend on what his team needs. Braum, on the other hand, is not one of these champions that has a very diverse role. Just about in every single game, your job is to be very peel focused. That is kind of what Braum's kit is all about. Some champions like Alistar, like Thresh even, they can be engage focused, they can be peel focused, they can try to be playmakers, or they can just try to stay with their carries. Their kit allows them to do many things. Braum's, on the other hand, his role, like his kit, is made specifically for peeling for your carries. You have this giant shield, you have this, a lot of CC built into your kit, so that is going to be your role just about every single time that you are playing Braum. But in another game, in another situation, you do want to be asking yourself what your role is, because it very well could differ depending on what your team needs. So if you're playing Alistar, like I said, the best example that I can give, if you're playing Alistar and your team is lacking any engage, so for example, let's say you're playing Alistar in this game, you guys have an Ivern jungle and a Gangplank top, not much engage, so in this game, your job might be a little bit more engage focused. Whereas, let's say you had a Sejuani jungle and you were playing Alistar, you might be a little bit more peel focused. But again, just to recap, Braum is not one of those champions. You're going to be very peel focused in just about every single game. As for the last question, which is what is your team's win condition? There's typically 4 factors to look at. Are we early game focused? Are we late game focused? Are we split push focused, or are we team fight focused? I would say, looking at your composition, it's pretty crystal clear. Tristana, Diana, and Gangplank are all very late game focused champions. Even though you guys were in a good position to be aggressive in the lane phase and have a good lane phase, I would say that your strong suit is definitely still the late game. So late game focus is going to be the first win condition for you guys. The other win condition I would say is grouping, simply because you have a GP who isn't that strong of a top lane or of a split pusher in comparison to somebody like Camille or Riven maybe, or Jax. These are the type of champions that are going to be looking to split push. So with all that being said, as we move into the mid to late game, I'm going to be really curious to see not only if you are playing according to your role on the team, but that your team as a whole is following your win condition. Okay, so we're at a bit of a standstill in the game. Nothing really has happened in a few minutes. Something is about to happen. But while we're still at this, downtime, I think it's a really good time to talk about the build. So your build right now is pretty standard, but based on what I saw from looking at this match prior to watching it, I noticed that your build gets really, really strange after this. You end up building something like a Sunfire Cape and a Thornmail. So let's just, set things out as far as what you should be building on Braum. So I think that the best option, or the most obvious option, is going to be this item here. We'll pause it here so we don't miss anything. Back it up. But this item here is going to be the most common. Relic Shield is the most common. Probably building it 10 times out of 10 on all tank support champions. So that's pretty obvious. The thing that I do want to mention, though, is Relic Shield, unlike Spell Thieves and unlike Ancient Coin, it's the only support item that you currently want to be upgrading all the way. The reason for that being is because Coin and Spell Thieves upgraded all the way, the stats that those items give are not really all that beneficial for the amount of gold that you have to spend on it. On the other hand, Relic Shield is going to give you some pretty decent tank stats, as well as 10% CDR. So this is the only item that you currently want to be building up all the way. You do this in this game, but I just want to say that in case you do play some mage supports or some caster supports who do build Coin and Spell Thieves, just so that you know, those items you only want to be upgrading up to the first 850 gold worth of the item, and that, after all, is all you need in order to complete the quest line. After that, when it comes to boots, there's kind of 2 ways to approach boots as support, at least for tank supports. You either ask yourself, am I a roaming type of support? or am I not a roaming type of support? If you're a roaming type of support, someone like Blitz or Thresh, you're going to be taking mobility boots every single time. If you're not one of those champions, then you fall into the other category of tank supports, which is just going to be, flat tank stats for boots. So that's either going to be Ninja Tabi or it's going to be Merc Treads, and it will vary just depending on what game that you are in. So I think that you have Ninja Tabis this game, and that's an excellent option. They have a Yasuo mid, and anytime that they have an AD mid, chances are they're going to be very AD heavy, so Ninja Tabi is going to be the best option. Potentially, maybe if this was, let's say, an Anivia, let's say, then maybe this was a better composition to be taking Merc Treads into. But all that is pretty standard, and like I said, after that is where your build gets a little bit weird. So I would say after that, the most common build to be going is Knight's Vow into Locket. I think that Locket is the strongest tank support item in the game right now. But when it comes to solo queue, CDR is probably the most valuable statistic in the game because CDR essentially means that your abilities will be up more often, which means you have the ability to make plays more often, and that's how you carry solo queue games as a support. So that's why we're going to put Locket in for the 4th item rather than the 3rd, because even though it is the strongest, we want the CDR from Locket. So it's going to be Knight's Vow, Locket. Those are going to be your next few items. After that, we'll probably go Redemption. So a little bit of a weird item, a little bit of a mix-up, because we have been prioritizing tank stats so much. But Redemption still is pretty good because it is going to give you increased heals and shields. And we can get it at this point in the game because you will be fairly tanky. So even though Redemption is an item that is typically for squishier champions, and it's not going to make you all that tanky, it won't hurt you all that much because you will be fairly tanky at that point. So that'll complete your 5th item. As for your 6th item, my general rule when it comes to a 6th item is I always like to build an item that is a defensive item that best suits the game that I'm currently in. Kind of the same idea as it goes for Merc Treads and Ninja Tabi. If I'm up against a team with a lot of AP, I'll go something with Magic Resist. This could be something like Banner of the Command, considering Banner of Command just got buffed. It's in a really good position. If you're in the need for something with more armor, Zeke's might be an option, even though that has armor and Magic Resist. You could even look at Righteous Glory, potentially. But it's just going to vary depending on what the game that you're in is and what kind of statistics that are needed from you. Let's switch our attention to the mid lane, though, because it looks like, as we saw, a fight was just about to break out. Good ultimate usage there. I would say that your positioning here is a little bit off. I'm not sure how you got put on this side of the wall, but considering you are peel focused, you want to make sure that you are with your carries. Again, I'm not sure what happened that pushed you on this side of the wall, but you do need to make sure that in these team fights you are with your carries. We'll skip ahead to another team fight, though, to see if you make the same mistake. Okay. I would say that Baron actually is a great call right now. Simply because you're only 24 minutes into the game, you don't have a large lead. So without a pick, I don't really think it's worth it. So I don't think Baron was the problem. I think this right here might be a problem. So you never want to or you never want to put yourself in a position that has a higher chance of failing than it does succeeding. So you take a risk here, essentially. And there's no need to take a risk. You could have easily just backed out, recalled way back here. I don't know if they're going to really get anything off of that. Maybe that leads to Baron. And if they do, then that definitely could be a little bit on you. So I don't think that you guys going Baron earlier was the problem. I think right here, the fact that you got caught out is a big problem. So that is a very important factor that I think a lot of people don't really understand. So a lot of people play really good for 99% of the game. And at the end, when they lose it, they don't really think that they did anything wrong. But I think it's really important to always look at what you did wrong rather than all the things that you did right. So even though you've been playing really, really good this entire game, 0-8, even though your build's a little questionable, you have been playing really, really good for the most part. But the problem is you make this one bad decision here to stick around, and that's going to lead to a Baron. And if we look down here, they're probably going to end in the next few minutes with this Baron. So it's always important to remember that when you are looking to improve, that you're looking at all the things that you do wrong rather than all the things that you do right. Because if you're doing something right, you don't really need to think about it too much. But if you're doing something wrong, that is something that you need to be thinking about and considering so that you can fix that in your gameplay. And vice versa. If you're doing a lot of things wrong, it can kind of work the other way around. Let's say you play bad for 99% of the game, but in a 50-minute game you end up stealing Baron. that very well could be the thing that sets the game aside and allows you to win the game. So you always just want to, take into account everything, not just the good, but also the bad. Okay, so as the game is about to wrap up, we'll still take a look at runes, but I always like to, towards the end of the coaching session, try to do a little bit of a recap of all the things that I think you did wrong, or all the things that you need to improve in, so that you know what you really need to work on moving forward. So there is a few minutes, but we have time to talk about this. So I would say that all of the issues, or of all the issues, I think that your biggest flaws were in the lane phase. You guys did win the lane, but there was a lot of things that I think you could have done better. That can be anywhere from playing around power spikes more. I think that was probably, if not the biggest issue. Playing around the level 2 power spike, playing around the level 6 power spike, making sure that you're not only getting these power spikes, but that you're also, when you do get them, in a good position to use them. I think that we saw that with both the level 2 and the level 6, that even though you guys got it, you didn't really use it all that well. We could also look at the relic shield and how to use that efficiently and use that smarter and better to control the wave. We could also look at, trading. I think that you guys didn't trade nearly enough in the lane phase, even though you guys were in a favorable lane matchup. Another thing is, I think you were playing too far back in the lane. We discussed how that was bad for a few reasons. Not only is your body language going to be a little suspicious when you move forward for a gank, but you're not in a good position to consistently run up and trade with the enemy. What else was there? Your build was very poor after your first 2 items, so we discussed how to do that properly. We still have to take a look at runes. Also, getting caught, making sure that you're never putting yourself in a situation that has a higher chance of failing than succeeding, because you getting picked a couple times towards the end is somewhat what led you guys to lose this game. So there's a lot of little things, and my advice to you would just be to focus on a few of them at a time. Because if you try to fix all of these things all at once, you're going to get overwhelmed, and it's going to be hard for you to do. So moving forward, I would highly recommend that you just focus on a few things at once. Try to improve one aspect of your gameplay at a time. But more specifically, I think that just focusing on the lane phase and making sure that you get the lane phase down really well is what's going to benefit you the most. That is going to be the end of the game. So now we'll switch over to the runes and take a look at that. So this right here is the rune page that I would be running on Braum. So Guardian is pretty straightforward. Aftershock is another good rune, but it doesn't really synergize all that well. Guardian is pretty straightforward. Bone plating just got introduced into the game, so that is going to be the next option. It's going to be really good. I think it's a really good rune. Ever since they put it out into the game, I've been a fan of it. On top of that, even though Braum does have some CC, he doesn't CC super often compared to some other supports like Leona or Alistar. So you're not going to be getting the most out of Font of Life. Instead, Bone Plate is just going to be the best option. Conditioning is a super solid rune. It's going to make you a lot tankier in the later parts of the game after the 10-minute mark. So conditioning is going to go there. This tree right here, these options, aren't the best for Braum. Ever since they changed it up, you used to be able to take Second Wind in this tree here. But instead, you don't really have a great option. I think, if anything, Revitalize is going to be the best thing. It's going to make your shields just a little bit stronger. On top of that, Overgrowth is more so for junglers. And Unflinching is just not the greatest for Braum because it revolves a lot around making flashy plays and using Summoner spells. So that's why Revitalize is going to go there. Inspiration in the secondary tree. I noticed you didn't take Magical Footwear, but I personally love Magical Footwear. I think the only downside to this item is taking it on champions who like to roam a lot. These are champions like Blitzcrank and Thresh, because you won't be able to get really early mobility boots. Of course, Braum doesn't go mobility boots, so you aren't really affected by that. It's just going to save you 300 gold from buying your item. It's also going to give you a bonus 10% or 10 movement speed, rather, which is just super helpful for all supports. I think that there's 2 other runes that are really strong for supports in the inspiration tree. Perfect Timing is good for other roles, and it is a good rune, but not for support. The 2 runes that I'm talking about, though, are Biscuit Delivery and Cosmic Insight. I tend to take Cosmic Insight on tank supports and Biscuit Delivery on caster supports because this is going to grant more mana, so that's really beneficial for caster supports. On the other hand, people like Braum, these CDR buffs will be a little bit more valuable. I think if you run into mana issues, then you definitely could take Biscuit Delivery on Braum, but I don't typically run into those issues, so that's why I take Cosmic Insight. But yeah, that is going to wrap up the runes. That should just about wrap up the entire coaching session.